Even in a hard sci-fi universe like Battletech, there are many legends. Mech warriors who disappear from enemy sensors. Battleships lost in the jump lanes. Yet there is one legend that grows. More stories are told as time passes. And some have begun to believe that legend is true. The rumor of a dark marauder, a battle mech wrapped in shadow, possessing living agility. It preys upon the souls of men in the dark of the deep periphery. That thing is still hunting, an evil thing known as the Black Marauder.
The Black Marauder, known also as the Dark One, has been lurking around Davian backwaters in the periphery since the Jihad. All who encounter it know how wrong it seemed, as if the mech was remade from memory, or as if this mech was living. It blends into the dark corners of mech bays, but when deployed planetside, still wraps itself in shadows and distortions. It has claimed the life of most who have piloted the mech. However, it knows a good tool when it sees one. Its last known pilot was Kevin Langstrom, a mech warrior of the Federated Suns. All previous pilots found the mech a nightmare to operate. That is, those who survived. Such a fate could also be inflicted upon its enemies, as several enemy mechs were found, cockpit sealed with no one left inside, taken into the darkness by darkness itself. Such is the strangeness you find surrounding the Dark One. The Dark One was the first story written by Lance Scarinci for the online StoryCorps. Its appearance in a few other official publications points to being a canon part of the universe now. Dark One was found on an asteroid at the end of the Fourth Succession War. The techs who worked on it noted how the parts weren't laid out like a Marauder. It was eventually pulled from storage in the Jihad, yet as with strange things, the mech and its pilot soon chose the path of blood and violence. At the height of its first run, the Dark One raided the world of Defiance, which turned into a battle rife with plans within plans and decoys. Yet once the pilot recovered classified star charts, they left for home. In a glorious display of self-reliance, Kevin the Dark One crushed the Pirate King, and then left for deep space. However, it's been implied the Dark One still has human minions, be they pirates or cultists, and raises hell in the Outworlds Alliance in the Ill Clan Age. So much for disappearing into deep space. Alright, now if we hadn't had enough spoilers, this is where we're going to start dropping what I consider, having read all of the stories regarding the Dark One as research for this. I'm going to try to piece together the mystery, what the Dark One actually is. Quite a few times in the telling of the stories, they mention something about entities from the fourth dimension. Like insane people in asylums talk about being watched by those things, how they can still watch you no matter where you go. Versus the fact that it technically still is a battle mech. It doesn't look like it's any kind of strange being until it opens its mouth or opens its eyes. It's probably the closest thing we have to a warp demon in the Battletech universe. Though if I was to actually classify it, I would say it would be somewhere between an eldritch abomination that has adopted a facade. It's essentially an alien from a different dimension. It's an extra-dimensional entity. And I don't know if the Dark One has its own separate personality and agenda, or if all the creatures from the fourth dimension have that kind of malignance that the Dark One does. It's there in the snow crows territory, picking off snow crows wherever it wants to, and so it has humans following it around. And it's not making a lot of sense. It didn't disappear into the depths of space like Kevin Langstrom was implying. I don't know if Kevin Langstrom is still around or if the Dark One is fully self-autonomous at this point. There is the extra story called Wolf Pelts and Raven Feathers. That story has the Dark One as a background character. He shows up as final villain and does final villain stuff and then disappears. You don't actually get to see it from the perspective of the Dark One like you do with the first 3 stories. I really would hate to see the Dark One turn out to be just another villain someone defeats. I don't know how far Lance is going to go with writing stories about the Dark One. The guess I can give is that the Dark One is an entity masquerading as a battle mech. We know it's not really a Marauder. The funny thing is there's some things in there that go against that, like it needs ammunition for its autocannon. The Dark One is honestly the first alien we've ever seen in the Battletech universe. It is. And then it also explains why it's the first alien we've ever seen, because it's not an alien from beyond our borders. It's a dimensional alien that's been looking down on us the entire time from the fourth dimension. It's up to Lance to keep the mystery going or to spoil us for the final stories of the Dark One. My entire opinion of the Dark One is that it's an eldritch dimensional alien. So let's say we were a little bit of a madman and we wanted to make our own model of the Dark One. There are STLs online that have the Dark One, but they are all based off of the video game design. So I decided to do things the hard way, and I'm going to take the new metal Marauder from Ironwind Metals and turn it into something akin to what we see on the front cover of the book. Yes, the front cover of the book has a black Marauder. The first thing I'm going to do is, instead of just say, hey, I'm just going to make a Dark One model, I went through the book and I found the very specific description that says this is what's different with the Dark One. So this list right here actually has the page number you'll find in the anthology book. The original ones aren't available anymore. And the exact sub-description we'd take as, this is what we're going to model. We're going to model this on the Dark One. And there's a lot of room for interpretation. However, the thing is that that's what you get with a text story. A lot of visual details, unless they are specifically mentioned, are left to you. A lot of these just say that the detail is wrong somehow. The first thing I'm going to do is, I have my crappy old mat for working on miniatures here, but we're going to add a cover. Good old-fashioned paper bag will do. So this paper bag will be our first step towards keeping the work surface clean. I'm going to be scraping metal. And when you're working with metal, you get a lot of fine-tuned metallic sand. You don't want to brush that stuff and let it go everywhere, over your place you walk, on your clothes, in your hands. You want it contained. So thus I have a disposable paper bag here. I then have the Marauder and its various different parts. This is the new metal Marauder from Ironwind Metals. Heck yeah. I'm going to be buying more than one of these, but the first one is going to turning its soul to chaos. So you get 2 autocannons when you pick up the blister. However, I just took the original one. There's a fatter one that goes in there that drops into the same ring. One of the details I actually mentioned in the story is the ring is different. So this is going to get shaved down and rebuilt. I have to make the ring look wrong. So here's the cockpit area. The cockpit area is kind of fun. Let me show you this. See the cockpit area? There's something kind of like a little overbite, like shark mouth going on here. I'm probably going to take a Dremel to this area and drill it out. And this is going to become a gaping maw, because we do have a description there that the Dark One can acquire a mouth and 5 eyes. If you look at the front cover, though, there's something very interesting and special and different about the Marauder. Do you see it? Maybe it's a bit too dark here. But if you look at it closely, there's this circular thing here and a circular thing here. The Black Marauder actually has eyes. So I think these circular little divots, not the cockpit, are the eyes of the Black Marauder. So I'm going to be adding those along the length of the cockpit. Here, I think this location right here is pretty much that first little nib right there, where that little ridge is coming up right there. That's where the first one goes. So the rest of the eyes will be positioned in relative location to that. There's 5 of them, so there's probably one in the front with the front of the cockpit sensors. And then, of course, you get 2 per side. I would guess from the front cover that the eyes that are on the other eyes that are on the front of the Marauder are not directly in line, because otherwise you'd be seeing double here, right? They're probably flush with the sides of the cockpit. There's too much shadow here, so we don't see the additional eyes. The eyes don't glow either. They're just there. They're dark eyes, like the Dark One would have. Going back to it, we have a lot of stuff to carve away. If you notice, also, when you get the metal Marauder, it comes with a few of these. I forgot, I think the torso mount is paired with one of the feet, but you get 2 other feet that come with jump jets, singular jump jets. Instead of having 2 of these on one sprue. They decided to give you 3 feet. That's what I got. I got 3 feet. See, there's 3 feet on this thing. So it doesn't need them all. The Black Marauder is not a jumping Marauder, so I'm going to take this jump jet piece. This is going to go in the melting pile. This jump jet piece and its other brother are going to be going on to another metal mech I'll be assembling to, put jump jets on something. They do mention twice that the reverse joint of the Marauder looks wrong on the Dark One, which is really funny. It's kind of flat. I'm thinking the way we could do this, the reverse joint, we could perhaps sharpen up this blockiness here, and then where we have this nice circular techno edge here, we can make it into a round dome that has something different going on with it. So it has more thickness to it. That's another funny thing. Sharper and bulkier is how they describe the Black Marauder. So I'm going to have to put some green stuff on here to actually bulk up the pieces on the Black Marauder. We also have a description of the normal Marauder, where it's described as having blocky arms. So we can kind of see what the blockiness of the arms look like. And we can see how the front is, where the PPC is located on these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to file down so that these smooth out a little. Anyway, so I'll need some tools. I have a basic razor blade, which is going to be used for cleanup. I could do some sharp cutting with this and just hack stuff off for quickness, but if I want to get it smooth and accurate, I'm probably going to file it down from the basic thing. That's another thing. It's supposed to look like an organic creature, but I don't want to mess up the fact that it looks like a mech, so I'm going to be using files. I have 4 of them here. One of them is pretty much ready to die, so I have it here as like kind of a backup, or like the last smoothing part of it. So I'm going to take this and decide to just start filing parts off of the Marauder. So after a little bit of work, I've done filing off screen so as not to bore you. And as a result, I, poof, have a modified Marauder. So as expected, I flattened out the joints on these legs. I also took some venting on the top and made it look a bit more like a tricep. Filing down the nose on these arms, as well as getting a bit more like definition in the muscle there, but not too much. I still wanted it to look like a mech. That's another thing. If they said you can't just use like a Marauder 2C or a Marauder 2 for the Dark One, because they didn't identify it as a Marauder 2C or as a Marauder 2. It was a standard Marauder. Yeah, also, I've added some eyes. You can see the little bitty eyes there. They look really ridiculous now. I even added the jaws. You can see, it's got a open mouth. It was kind of difficult to do. That was trying to do sharp teeth at that scale. The entire mouth is only 4 millimeters tall. But I still did it because I had to. It was part of the miniature. I did just a little bit of filing on the feet here. And I filed down that top section of the autocannon that gives it that more mechanical jacket look to the barrel. This is a more natural, smooth barrel that just kind of grows out of the rest. I also took away a few things that looked nuts and bolty. I removed those. Of course, it does kind of, I worry because I wonder why does the Dark One, the Black Marauder, have an autocannon? In a universe known for retrofits, why does the Black Marauder have an autocannon that requires ammunition when a living creature like the Dark One probably should have an additional energy weapon as well? Oh well. I want to make some stats for it later. I want to make some stats for it later, and I have a few ideas as what counts as what when you're building the Dark One. But yeah, the hip section, I took away the rear vents by just covering them with a little bit of putty. They kind of look more like panels now. And then I gave a bit more sharpness and bulk to the front section, which had a bit more smoothness, kind of like an old 1960s car would have. Instead, I took that away and just made it blocky, like a big old Marauder. It's even wedge-shaped. If you like that sharpness, it's wedge-shaped. So these are the parts necessary to make the Marauder. There's one other touch I did. It's noted as having a really wide hip base, where the hip joint is just wider than it should be. So I put some putty in there, where the hip joint is going to stand off a distance from the rest of the mech. So this mech is going to have a stance to it. But this Marauder is supposed to have wider hips than usual. So I'm going to get this assembled, and we're going to see what it's like to have the dark one finally start standing up on its own base. And here we have the dark one assembled in metal form. I tried to make it as solid as possible. Notice at the last moment I forgot a detail. I added the chin antenna that are mentioned. There's a scene where Black Kevin walks in and is looking over the Black Marauder. He notices the chin antenna. He says antenna like plural, so I added 2 of them. There might be more, but as far as I know of the chin antenna, those are on the original Macross/Unseen Marauder design. I kind of used that as a pattern. They're just wires that stick out of the front, but it actually has the chin antenna like they're supposed to have from the story. I didn't get my description off Wikipedia. I went with actually reading the book and got there. So, you know what? Painting this thing is going to be weird and strange and different. Let's put some primer on this, and I'll show you how my paint job is going to go. Here we have the Marauder with primer and its first coat of detail paint on it. I do say detail paint because I'm going to put down the light stuff first that I don't want washing into oblivion for a very specific reason. So I have the cockpit lights and the maw and the ends of the guns all painted up already. But that's because I'm going to use a not too typical black paint on this, because the dark one requires a specific kind of black paint. There's this kind of paint called Vanta Black. The copyright is held by a specific artist. Another artist was badass and decided to rebel against him, researched the formula and decided, hey, just using techniques I know of, I'll make my own version of Vanta Black. I bought some. It's not cheap, but this is the Mark III version of the Rebellious Studio. It's on culturehustle.com. It is a black that is black enough that it kind of sucks up the light. It is very matte. You shouldn't put any kind of coating on top of it, as fear will keep it, prevent it from actually having its full usage. But I plan on using this black as my standard black color and using a normal black as a highlight. Yes, that's how dark this is. I can use normal black as a highlight. So this is going to be one exceptionally dark mech, and I'm going to paint it very precisely. I don't want to overpaint anything with this black that I want to be a lighter color. Time for some fun. And here is the painted version, although I'm kind of worried about it. This ultra black paint turned out extremely matte, which means if I brush it too hard, it'll strip off. So it kind of needs a coating. Or I need to go back and, after a little bit of cleanup, paint it in normal black. But you can kind of see by looking at it, this is, it actually does have that thing where you can kind of see the highlight with the normal black. Black on black highlight looks really weird, but it's also the effect you expect to see on the dark one. Try to give him metallic teeth as well, but that didn't turn out so well. Oh well. Sometimes you make crazy looking paint jobs that aren't the best in the world. But here I am. I got it. I'm going to try to give it a spray coat after a little bit of touch-up. See, it dinged a little there. After a little bit of touch-up, I'm going to give it a spray coat. And with that spray coat, hopefully it doesn't destroy the paint, and it preserves everything. So it'll all be nice and dandy. So I'll be good for that. This is the dark one in its final form. Very featureless mech since it's solid black and a specialist black on top of that. If I put any other paint on top of it, it'll look brighter. Thank you for watching the video. Hopefully you have a happy Halloween, and by all means, stay away from fake mechs on distant asteroids.